Order. I'd like to go ahead and have the members go ahead and indicate who they are for the roll. Here, move that way. I am William Collins, Chairman. Hi, it's Ryan Hartman. Former and Mayor for Stanfield area.
Steve Miller, Pinal County Supervisor for District 3.
And Brad Roach Farmer, Pinal County.
Let the record show that we have a quorum. And if the DWR staff will introduce themselves.
Kennedy Shepherd, GUAC Coordinator, and we do ask that all members speak into their respective microphones, just it helps us with the audio. Great, thanks, guys.
Natalie Mast, Active Management Area Director, responsible for the Midlands. Good morning, Amanda Long, Associate Water Analyst. Melissa Sykes, Water Management Services Program Coordinator.
Thank you. This brings us to item number 2. And Ms. Shepherd, if you would address the logistics.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. This is our first GUAC meeting that is being offered hybrid, so I just want to go over some logistics before we get started. For all of you that are joining us online, I do ask that you please keep your phone, your microphone muted during the meeting. This helps us with audio feedback. If you have any questions throughout the meeting, please feel free to put those into the chat box. We will read and address those during the call to public. And for any of those online and present, the call to public will be your opportunity to address any questions or concerns that you may have. This meeting is also being recorded and it will be posted to our website in a couple of business days. Again, for those of you online, if you are having any technical difficulties, our help desk contact information is on the screen and they are available to help you out. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd. I'll let the record show that member Scott Burns has joined us. Thank you. Let's move us on to item number 3, which is the Colorado Window Update. James is here.
James, are you able to unmute yourself? Okay, James, maybe you can try calling in or something. We can, we have another presentation we can skip to. Okay. Maybe while we work out those audio issues with James, we can skip to another agenda item.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and skip on to item number 4. Is the Arizona Water Bank Authority 2023 plan of operation with Virginia College.
This is the top.
Okay, thank you. I think we can proceed. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the council. My name is Virginia O'Connell, Director of the Arizona Water Banking Authority. I guess I'll wait till my presentation. Yeah, there we go. So this is the time of year that the Water Bank brings its preliminary plan of operation for the next year to the Groundwater Users Advisory Council as an update for the public and to provide any comments. The next slide, please. So as you know, there hasn't been excess water available to the water bank for a number of years now. With that, we don't have any water to store. However, we can continue to meet our objectives through other means. The water bank can purchase long-term storage credits. We also have an agreement with the Gila River Indian community under the drought contingency plan for purchasing intentionally created surplus water or ICS for rainwater. So next slide, please. So this table identifies the funds that we have available for next year. For the withdrawal fees, we're looking at roughly 1.8 million in the Phoenix AMA, 978,000 in the Tucson AMA. And I do want to point out that next year will be, after several years, will be the first time we do not have to make $1.2 million available for use by Department of Water Resources. So these amounts reflect that. However, we do have to still make 200,000 available to ANZAC or the Arizona Navigable Stream Adjudication Commission. That's always a mouthful. We also have water storage tax available. These monies have been reserved by the CAWCD board for long-term storage credit purchases by the bank. These are funds that were actually reserved in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, but we haven't utilized them all, so we do have carryover there. And again, in the Tucson AMA, under the withdrawal fees, that 978 also includes carryover because we typically just have just under 400,000 in revenues in that AMA. And as you know, we don't have withdrawal fees available from the Pinal AMA because those funds are used for the groundwater efficiency projects. So in the Phoenix AMA, we're utilizing those funds to purchase the ICS firming credits from the Gila River Indian community. And so you can see that amounts to about 6,100 acre feet. And that number does reflect the 10% reduction that is taking for evaporation losses in Lake Mead. So we actually purchased a little bit more than that. The rate for next year for ICS is $268.80 per acre foot. That amount is basically double of what we had been able to purchase this year because we now have the withdrawal fee funds available to us. In the Tucson AMA, we're looking at purchasing just over 3,000 acre feet of credits. And based on the water delivery and storage costs for CAP, that rate is about $214 per acre foot. So historically, we've based our purchase amounts on this, what it would cost a day to store water. So in the for the water storage tax, for the Phoenix AMA, we're looking at purchasing, or we could purchase up to 10,640 acre feet of credits. In the Tucson AMA, just under 25,000 acre feet of credits. So overall, the plan is just under 14 million, and we could potentially purchase about 44,800 acre feet of credits. But I do want to point out that the amount, the 314 per acre foot of long-term storage credits in Tucson and roughly 312 in the Phoenix AMA, the market has been getting rather tight. Whether we can actually purchase credits for that amount is, we'll have to look and see. But still go out there and look to see if we can purchase credits that are, within reason. So next slide, please. So with a tier 2A shortage condition next year, the water bank also has a firming obligation to the Gila River Indian community. That's under the Arizona Water Settlements Act. We do not have a firming requirement for CAP, M&I subcontractors or on-river contractors. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And also, the Southern Nevada Water Authority did not request intentionally created unused apportionment for next year. So there's no recovery for interstate purposes in 2023. So next slide, please. Okay, so on the left-hand column in the table, those are the objectives that we have by location. The second column identifies all the credits that we have available in order to meet our objectives, including firming. The third column identifies the credits that we anticipate utilizing in 2023, and then the last column identifies the credits that we would still have remaining. So I mentioned that we do not have a firming obligation under a tier 2A for CAP and an subcontractor, so you see zeros there. However, if CAP, after reviewing all the orders that come in October, indicates it does kick slightly into the M&I pool, then we can work directly with CAP to cover that firming obligation, because we're right on the cusp right now between NIA and marine firming. For on-repair as well, there's no firming. For the Gila, we again plan to utilize the firming credits that we have. Those were credits that we accrued on reservation. They're not long-term storage credits. It was credit we received from delivering water directly to the reservation. It was actually the community's water, and we offset their water delivery costs, both O&M and energy costs. So, and we accrued basically a credit for doing that. So we'll just be deducting from those. The other settlements right now are not enforceable yet, so we do not have a firming obligation for those. So that's basically what I have on that table. And I think the next slide is just, if we can go there, it's just a slide for any questions that you might have.
Do the members have any questions for Virginia? Yes, Brian.
Thanks, Virginia. Did you say the purchase cost of the credits was $260.80?
The 268.80, that's for the ICS firming credit. So under the agreement, the price started at $240 per acre foot. And then there's a 3% increase each year, but so it's just 3% off the 240. So I think it's $7.20 each year. So it's non-compounded, it doesn't add. And so at this point, we're up to 268.80 for next year.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Virginia? Thank you. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Are we able to go back to the Colorado River update?
Yes, James, do you mind unmuting yourself? So you can try your audio again. There we go.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Oh, okay. And I apologize entirely. The technical issues always seem to be part of the gig. My name is James Hefner. This time with full audio. I'm a water resource analyst for the Colorado River Management section. And yeah, we can go ahead and let's start right there. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yep. Start with a brief review of the Colorado River System status. These numbers reflect levels as of September 7th for the smaller upper basin reservoirs, moving from top upper right and down around. We've got Fontenelle is at 89% capacity, Flaming Gorge at 74% capacity, Blue Mesa at 40%, and Memorial Point at 96%, and finally Navajo at 54%. As of the 7th, Lake Powell with an elevation of 3530.71 feet, 25% capacity. Lake Mead was an elevation at 1044.04 feet and 28% capacity. Looking at the reservoir system as a whole, we currently have roughly 19.8 million acre feet storage, or 34% of the system capacity, approximately 3.7 million acre feet decrease from this time last year. Slide, please. This is a historic and forecasted water year unregulated inflow into Lake Powell. The lighter blue bars show the historic water year unregulated inflow. 30-year average from 91 to 2020 is 9.6 million acre feet. According to Reclamation's water supply report as of August, water year 2022 was forecast to be 5.96 million acre feet, or 62% of average. The box in the upper left-hand side of the graph shows the August volumes for the min, most, and max in red, green, dark blue, respectively, for water year 2023. The minimum probable forecast is 4.7 million acre feet, or 49% of the average. Most probable is 8.3 million acre feet, and the max probable is 15.7 million acre feet. Two things I'd like to note here. One, there was a new update that came out after the slides were submitted on Friday, and the water year forecast for 2022 is now 6.08 million acre feet. Not much of a change, but anything is always welcome. As far as 2023, the min and most forecasts are unchanged, and the max forecast is decreased slightly to 15.5 million acre feet. The other item that I want to note, or at least emphasize, is even though there is a possibility of seeing those improved flows, and we certainly would like to see those, based on what we've seen over the last few years, it's more likely we'll continue to see conditions to track more with the min and most going forward. So if you haven't done so in your planning decisions, I'd encourage you to drive your focus more towards those forecasts, or at least give less weight to the most forecasts. Next slide, please. Here we have Lake Powell end of month elevations from Reclamation's August 24-month study and 2-year probabilistic projections. The probable max is in blue, the most probable is in green, and the probable min in red. The individual gray lines are additional illustrated traces from the CRIMS ESP projections. These individual traces and model runs are produced by Reclamation to provide additional information about risk and uncertainty for near-term planning horizons, and they have to see if there could be more traces below the problem min or possibly above the problem max. This modeling does reflect many actions taken by the Department of Interior, that is to send 500,000 acre feet from Flaming Gorge Reservoir down to Lake Powell, as well as keeping 480,000 acre feet in Lake Powell that would have normally been delivered to Lake Mead. And as we go forward in time, you see increasing hydrologic uncertainty. Some of the driest traces obviously approach and even fall below critical elevations of Lake Powell. Next slide, please. Now we're looking at Lake Mead end of month elevation projections, the August 24-month study. And when looking at this figure again, I encourage you to focus your attention on the lower half of the cloud, as many of the ESP traces and the 24-month study probable minimum and most probable fall towards this range. End of calendar year 2022, most probable elevation, 1040.78 feet. The end of calendar year 2023, most probable elevation is 1021.39 feet. And just in case there's any question, these projected elevations, these are actual physical elevations, as well as those appearing in the previous slide. And with apologies, like the previous, the unregulated forecast, a new 24-month study came out last Friday. With regard to Mead, the starting elevation in September is a few feet higher due to the monsoonal moisture that we saw, as well as the reduced water orders. But the downward trends that you see continue. Next slide, please. Another question that always comes up is what's in as far as the 500 plus plan. Here's what's been modeled as far as the August 24-month study. Much of this is carried forward for the previous months, with notable additions being, notable addition, pardon, is the Metropolitan Water District's 2022 ICS delivery is expected closer to what was originally projected or anticipated in the June 2021 modeling. Anticipated deliveries for 2023 are expected to increase, as are CAPs, though not quite as dramatically. Additional conservation activities incorporating the August model were the remaining agreements with the cities under the CWCT system conservation and Human Mesa Irrigation District fouling. September 1st, the CAP board approved an additional 59,000 acre feet of system conservation with 5 subcontractors: Tucson, Phoenix, Peoria, Scottsdale, Sarco LLC. Those volumes are not yet included in the modeling, neither in the August nor in the September model. For the September update, the numbers you see here are essentially unchanged, except that Metropolitan Water District is actually forecast to take an additional about another 4,000 acre feet this year. Next slide, please. Here we have the teacup diagrams showing the end of calendar year 2022 physical and effective elevations for Lake Powell and Lake Mead. The effective elevations are determined as if 480,000 acre feet held back in Lake Powell had actually been delivered to Lake Mead. You see the effective elevation in Lake Powell is lower, and the effective elevation in Lake Mead is higher than physical elevations. The projected effective elevation for Lake Mead in 2022 is 1047.61 feet, which was used to set the tiers. Next slide, please. Given the projected effective elevation, 1047.61 feet, the Commissioner of Reclamation announced Lake Mead will operate in a Tier 2A shortage on August 16th. For Arizona, the 592,000 acre foot reduction, or about 21% of our annual apportionment. Nevada will have a 25,000 acre foot reduction. Mexico has a 104,000 acre foot reduction, but under Tier 2A, California has no required water savings contributions. Next slide, please. Here we have a graphic showing reductions of contributions associated with the 07 guidelines, interim guidelines, Minute 323, and the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan, as well as the Financial Water Scarcity Contingency Plan. This chart includes some additional tier labels that you may not have seen before. You might, but lately there's been more of this appearing in the presentations. For those of us in Arizona, Tier 2B should be familiar, but as we move downward, California and Mexico take incremental reductions between a 2B and Tier 3. So those are expanded out. In Tier 2B, California's BCP reduction is 200,000 acre feet, 250 at Tier 2C, 300 at Tier 2D, and 350 at Tier E. In addition, Mexico takes an additional incremental reduction from Tier 2B to E, but Arizona's reductions being the same throughout those years. Next slide, please. In June, we heard from the Commissioner an additional 2 to 4 million acre feet of conservation, in addition to what's already been planned, was needed to protect the system. Media coverage leading up to the August 24-month study was anticipating an announcement by Reclamation. However, there was no announcement of either additional mandatory cuts or an agreement by the basin states to come up with additional conserved volumes. Despite the basin states not meeting the mid-August deadline set by Commissioner Tootin, the basin states will continue to meet with the U.S. to address challenges on the Colorado River and are discussing ways that additional reductions can be implemented. And as I said before, all water users have a stake in the outcome and all need to contribute to the solution. Next slide, please. Here we have the 5-year probabilistic projections of future conditions, 5-year tables on the Colorado River system, which extends to 2027. For modeling purposes, simulate years beyond 2026, assuming the continuation of the existing operations, the 07 guidelines, 2019 drought contingency plan, 323. The table here shows the percent of traces from the CRM CSP run that result in an event persistent condition. Going through the chances of different tiers in the next 5 years, the takeaways are 2024 to 2027, over 70% of the traces are in Tier 2 or Tier 2-3 operating conditions, and at least 40% of the traces are in Tier 2, 3, or Tier 3 operating conditions. And again, these do not represent all possible outcomes. These are made with single models and certain assumptions. You could have additional outcomes beyond that, other different assumptions, different modeling, or just as a general, qualifier for the uncertainty in any modeling. Next slide, please. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. I can take any questions here if you'd like, although given the technology issues, it might be better to either email them or call myself, James Hefner, or Rachel on Necton here at the department. If you're interested in seeing the September 24-month study charts or the integrated info charts, those can be found on Recreation's website, either directly or we do have the links on our dashboard to the state. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, James. If the members have any questions for James, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 5, which is the groundwater withdrawal fee recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, council members and members of the public. My name is Melissa Sykes, and the Water Management Systems Program Coordinator, and I'll be going over the WMAP fund balance and the status of the DCP groundwater conservation grants. And I'll introduce the WMAP project that is requesting renewal. The current balance is $212,259. Of that, $75,000 is committed, leaving a balance of $137,259. If we renew the Natural Resource Education Center project for $30,000, we would be left with $107,259 in the WMAP fund. We expect to collect about $335,000 next year. However, at the current rate, the Pinal AMA fund will be depleted by 2029, and while that is some time away, it's important to consider that these numbers only account for the legacy projects and not potential new projects. Projects that are currently funded with the WMAP funds are the Irrigation Management Service, the Natural Resources Education Center, and the Pinal County Water Augmentation Authority. And that's the PICWAD project. It's dedicated in statute to receive up to $200,000 on an annual basis. So next I'll be giving an update on the groundwater conservation grant. Both projects are ongoing. The using project-based STEM education to enhance groundwater conservation in Pinal County schools from University of Arizona Project WET has a remaining balance of $21,681, and the leak detection equipment replacement project is currently in the process of signing an amendment to accept the additional funding that was allotted to them from the Maricopa Stanfield Irrigation and Drainage District project. Finally, I would like to briefly introduce the WMAP dashboard that will be posted to our website in a few months. Share this. Okay, there it is. Great, so the dashboard consists of 5 tabs. The first goes over the WMAP annual funding. And here you'll find information regarding the unallocated fund balance, WMAP fee by year, and the total WMAP fees collected. And if you want to see information regarding a single AMA, which is the Pinal AMA, you would just click here, and all that information would be only highlighted for the Pinal AMA. The next tab is for the WMAP projects. When you select a project in the list, this list will be shown all the information regarding that project. We could open now. We go for the overall project. So that will bring up all information in the contracts, our contract number, execution, expiration dates, and project description, and where the project is along the process. This one's a little different because they received a full 30,000. And the next tab is a similar format, but this is just for the groundwater conservation grant projects. We can click on the new project here, and I'll bring all that information up here as well. The remaining tabs are for notes and a glossary of uncommon terms. And before we move on to, I completed my presentation there. So before we move on to the NREC renewal request presentation, Kyle Miller will start the withdrawal fee discussion. So before that, are there any questions regarding WMAP funds or the groundwater conservation grants?
Do the members have any questions with regard to groundwater fee presentation, WMAP presentation? I have one comment on the future presentations on your website. on your groundwater conservation grant projects. I think you really ought to identify who the recipients were of the project name,
Okay.
because there's no, no one can track what those are, well, without a project name. And the same thing on the second page of your presentation, where you indicated that there was a contract in 2023 through 124, parentheses APW. I don't know that a lot of people would realize that there was a project with.
Are you referring to the member packet that was sent out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was only for members, that wasn't intended for the public, but there are printouts for the public to review as well.
Right.
But I would take that in.
I think it would be good that in the future to identify who the
Yes.
recipients are, so that people understand who those recipients they are.
Thank you. I'll just take a moment.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Just real quick, you referenced the dashboard, the dashboard is up and running.
It's not live yet on our website, but it will be in the upcoming months.
You'll notify us when it's.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move along to the presentation with the presentation by Kyle Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council. Thank you, Melissa, for the WMAP update. I apologize for not being able to be there in person, but I'll do my best to provide the needed information here. So withdrawal fees for 2022 are set at $3 per acre foot, which remains the same as 2021. 65 cents per acre foot of that goes towards the WMAP, and $2.35 per acre foot goes towards the Irrigation and Efficiency Fund. Today, GUAC members are asked to make a recommendation to the DWR director regarding the rate of withdrawal fees for reporting year 2023, which will be collected in calendar year 2024. For your reference, this table here provides withdrawal fee rates and money collected from the past 5 years. And the highlighted sections to the far right under 2023 are the withdrawal fee statutory framework. So the component of the fee that goes towards the WMAP, and again, that's money set aside for conservation, augmentation, and research of water availability in the AMA, cannot exceed $2 per acre foot. And the portion that goes into the Irrigation Efficiency Fund cannot exceed $2.50 per acre foot. The admin and enforcement portion of the fee, which the Pinal AMA hasn't implemented for the past 5 years, has a maximum of $1 per acre foot, but as is clear from here, no minimum. So before asking the members to recommend a withdrawal fee rate for the reporting year 2023, I'd be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Any questions for Kyle from the members? I have a question with respect to the Irrigation Efficiency Fund. Do we have any indication of how much of that has actually been spent, or how it's been collected, and how it's been spent, who has received it?
So the statewide planning group implements that fund. I don't know off the top of my head how much of that has been spent or the specific projects, but that's something we can provide after the meeting to members. Or if you'd like, we can provide a presentation on that at the next meeting.
I'd be curious if you could go ahead and send it to the members. That would be appreciated. I know it's a fairly large dollar amount each year, but I don't know if it's just sitting in the pot accumulating or whether it's actually using it.
Yeah. There has been some use. We know as projects go out the door, they get kind of a final review in the AMA section when we just confirm a few details on the project, and we have reviewed a handful of projects. So I know there is money going out the door. I'm just not aware of a total dollar amount.
I was going to say, I guess one of my concerns is if we're collecting $2.35 and it's not being used, perhaps we want to look at revisiting that number. Any other questions for the Kyle? For the members? Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it. This moves us on to item number 6.
Before we do, sorry, Mr. Chair, we do need a recommendation on the 2023 withdrawal fee from the council.
I was kind of reluctant to do that without knowing how that, irrigation efficiency fund was being, distributed, but, the members have any, thoughts as far as, like, what those 2023 fund or
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Wiggins.
I would suggest, I do believe that we need to make this recommendation today on a timely basis, statutorily, do we not?
That is correct, yeah.
So we need to do this today. I do believe that information, when it becomes available, and it can be dug up over the next few days, needs to be sent out to the commission to go back, so we can take a look at those things, to at least have them in mind for next year, and also to be understanding what it is that we're looking at. I would also suggest if we can turn to the slide, that I saw a slide in here someplace that had an annual period of time that it showed some of these WMAP funded projects starting to run low on money. That right there.
Right.
You know, we look like we're in pretty good shape at this point in time. But one of the things I think that we don't fully have baked into this chart is the fact that beyond a doubt, there'll be less withdrawal fees delivered next year. And then the year after that, it's going to be even worse. I would suggest that we consider at this point in time, because of that, changing the relative values of the two ways we split that, and getting a little bit more money into the WMAP portion of it at this point in time. Because as I say, what we have here, it shows basically a pretty much continual regularity of inputs of water withdrawal fees, and that's not the way it's going to be.
And I concur with your, point that you're making, Scott. I don't like to see us carrying a diminishing balance. I think we need to stabilize that. I'd like to see us offer up a little different split. We currently now it's a 65 cents for the WMAP. 5 under the irrigation fund, and I think we need to adjust that where the, perhaps the WMAP is going up.
I believe you're correct.
Anyone have a suggestion or recommendation?
Well, I would say, without knowing exactly, where the 235 is going, how it's obligated without anything else, it does mean we're doing a little bit of shot in the dark work here. When we're going to recommend something like this, I certainly wish we'd have had that material in front of us. But by the same token, it's been a rough couple of years, and maybe next year we'll have that a little bit more where we understand that's something we need to look at it on a timely basis. I would suggest that the 65 cents could go as high as $1. I would say it would be someplace in that range, because I think we're going to see some pretty substantial falls in water withdrawal fee generation. There's a whole bunch of CAV water that haven't fees paid on it that there's none now. A little bit this year, next year there's none. So I don't think at this point in time, to bolster those programs that we've all been working hard to carry forward over the years, that we would be reluctant to go as high as $1 and over to there.
Thank you, Scott. Let's be in the other board members. I concur. Right?
I agree. It's hard without having the other data. Hopefully we wouldn't create any kind of shortfall if we're gonna hold the cumulative number at 3 by cutting that back that much, without knowing, I guess.
And my recollection as Supervisor Miller, we had the same conversation last year. I was looking forward to seeing that kind of information provided with respect to the irrigation efficiency fund. So little concerned that we haven't seen that input data this year. Starts out, I think, fourth line in the next year with, I think, I'd like to have a motion to set that, Scott, that you suggested.
Chairman, I would be willing to make a motion to recalibrate our withdrawal fees to the $1 level for WMAP and $2 for the water bank irrigation efficiency fund.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And we have a motion from Scott Ergens and second from Steve Miller. Need a roll call vote or can we do it by an aye vote? All those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Thank you.
And Chairman, if we may, could we make a formal request that here over the next couple of weeks that the commission gets sent the information that we've requested so we can take a look at it in retrospect and know if we did the right thing or not?
Certainly, yeah, we'll definitely send that out.
But I'll look forward to it. I sure appreciate you all digging it up for us.
I'd like to also make the point that this time next year, we actually have that information around us so that we know what back or this recommendation may have on funding. Like I said, I thought it was supposed to be in this year's presentation. All right.
We can do that, and I apologize that we didn't have that ready today.
All right, now we'll move on to item number 6. The WMAP project update and funding renewal request. And first up will be the Natural Resource Education Center. Jennifer.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Jennifer Salcido, the Director of the Natural Resource Education Center of Pinal County, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak with you today in person and to give you a little information about our program. I hope to give you a little history of our program, an update of our current program, and to ask for your recommendation to the Arizona Department of Water Resources to continue and support. So, what is the Natural Resource Education Center? We call it NREC, and NREC was started in 1996 by the 3 Pinal County Natural Conservation Districts to address the need for education in Pinal County for adults and students, children, about our natural resources and the conservation of natural resources, and the role that agriculture plays in the use of those natural resources and the conservation of those natural resources. So for 26 years, the Natural Resource Education Center has existed to do that, and we are going strong. We made it through COVID, and here we are back up and running in person, and we're glad to be here. We have some pictures here. We have 2 classrooms out at Central Arizona College. They provide the classrooms for us. So we work in conjunction with Central Arizona College. We have an agreement with them. And we use those classrooms to host field trips. We have schools and adults and children alike come out and experience our 4-acre farm that we have out at Central Arizona College, which is back up and running. This was not running for 2 years, but it is planted. It has corn in it right now and getting ready for our fall corn festival. So we're excited for that. We can have the next slide. The NREC staff. We have 4 members of our team. 3 of those members are certified teachers in the state of Arizona. So we are very diligent about making sure that the material that we provide to schools and to teachers and adults alike meets Arizona standards for not only basic curriculum, but also for the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the STEM curriculum that is directed by the state of Arizona. Next slide, please. NREC provides not only our field trips out to CAC, but we also provide online instruction. We did that, of course, during COVID. It was a learning curve, presenting that program online, but boy, we got it down to a science the last 2 years. So we still utilize that for schools that are unable to travel to our program. We use the online system to provide our program to them. And we also go in and visit the classrooms. After the 2 years of COVID, we are just seeing how important it is for us to be in those classrooms and for them to be out at our program, to have that one-on-one with them interaction. So we are so happy to be able to do that again. Next slide. We provide 6 programs throughout the school year. We have a Veggie Ventures program where we bring students out to CAC and we have vegetables planted for them so they get to harvest. And we talk, of course, about, well, I should mention at each one of these programs, there is a water conservation component to each program. We have a Water Out West program that we piggyback on the University of Arizona's Project WET that they provide to 4th graders. We provide our Water Out West program for 5th graders that builds on that information that they get from Project WET. So that's a great reinforcement to water conservation in Arizona and water stewardship in Arizona. We have our Adventures Corn Festival that we're getting ready to kick off soon, next month. We have From Alfalfa to Ice Cream, which is a dairy program. We have the 5 Seas of Arizona. And we have an 8 program called Let's Get Crackin'. That program we actually take on the road to kindergartners in the state. And well, it is in the state. We concentrate in Pinal County, but we do actually take our program to Maricopa County and some of the other smaller counties in the state. Not as much as Pinal County, but we do go out and visit some of the other counties. NREC is sponsored by the 3 natural resource conservation districts, Eloy, Lawrence Coolidge, and West Pinal. Like I mentioned before, 26 years ago, those conservation districts got together and they identified the need to have education out in the public, and so NREC was created. We are also overseen by the Arizona State Land Department. NREC is a 100% grant-funded 501c3 nonprofit organization. We receive grants from the Arizona Department of Water Resources, Gila River Indian Community, and the Pinal County Group of Pinal. Our Water Out West program kind of is our shining star program. Of all the 46 conservation districts in Arizona, our education program is very unique. Most of the conservation districts in Arizona, they do small adult education, but our natural resource education is the only education center in the state that goes out to the schools, has a actual classroom where students can come. And so our Water Out West reaches quite big number of students and adults in Pinal County. We have our Water Out West reaches K through 5th graders in the state. It meets Arizona State educational standards. Like I mentioned before, it builds on the information that 4th graders learn in Arizona Project WET, and it is unique to Arizona. In that program, students and adults learn about the water cycle, the watersheds in Arizona, water history of Arizona and conservation in Arizona, water movement and management, irrigation and conservation. And we have a Rolling Rivers mobile trailer that we take when we go out to visit schools that helps reinforce all of those concepts. That's our Rolling Rivers trailer that we take, sponsored by the Arizona Department of Water Resources. It's a really hands-on opportunity for the kids and they love it. ADWR support of our program helps to fund the expenses of our program, provides resource materials, classroom supplies, office supplies. We do lease our classrooms from Central Arizona College for a very minimal amount. So this funding helps to fund that. Of course, we have to provide our own internet and we have to have an accountant. So your support is greatly appreciated in those areas. For 22-23 school year, our projection is to resume in-classroom visits and to have our field trips back out at Central Arizona College. We have not had any field trips out to the college in 2 years, but we have already 9 scheduled between now and December, so we're excited about that. We will be maintaining the farm that we are our 4-acre farm at Central Arizona College. And we will be updating material kits in classroom follow-up support in this upcoming school year. So INRIC completely appreciates the support of the Arizona Department of Water Resources, and we ask that you would please just recommend that you continue that support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I answer any questions?
Members have any questions? Yes, right. Go ahead.
What did we do last year? What do we recommend?
30 minutes.
I do have a question. How soon are you, NREC overseen by the Arizona State Land Department?
So we have to give reports to them about what is performed, what is provided. We provide their curriculum, and it's just archived and put into their archives and recorded.
Is that a statutory requirement or?
They provide some money.
Yes, they do.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
They
they
say that you're funding something. So
Yes, they do.
what school districts do you currently reach out to?
So all the districts in Pinal County. So Maricopa, Coolidge, Florence, Casa Grande, Concho, Eloy, Toltec. All of them, including we do now go into a lot of the charter schools as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the presentation. And entertain a motion for a recommendation as to the continuing funding for the NREC program. Oh, need a dollar amount.
Oh, is 30 the request? Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Request.
I move to continue the $30,000 funding program.
All right, I'll second it. All right, seconds it. All in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Jennifer, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Jennifer.
Thank you.
All right, move on to item number 7. This is the overdraft and management goal in the Pinal active management area. Presentation by Amanda Long.
Thank you, Chairman Holdings and members of the council. My name is Amanda Holland and I'm a water analyst at the department. Today I'm going to walk through the method used to assess the management goals for the day and the fifth management plan. So as you know, each AMA has a management goal. The management goal of the AMA.
Is your mic on?
It is, sorry.
There it is.
I can be a little bit, sorry.
Thank you.
Is that all better?
Perfect. Thank you very
Sorry
much.
about that. So as you know, each AMA has a management goal. The management goal of the Pinal AMA is to allow for development of non-irrigation uses and to preserve existing agricultural economies in the active management area as long as feasible, consistent with the necessity to preserve future water supplies for non-irrigation uses. The management goal in each AMA has been discussed in each management plan. However, the analysis from the first to the fourth management plans have been inconsistent. Past plans did not all include the same things. Depending on the plan and on the AMA, they sometimes included annual water budgets over time, the potential to achieve the goal under various scenarios and projections, and sometimes just a list of impediments to achieving the goal was included. So for the development of the fifth management plan, the department wanted to develop a clear, consistent method for assessing the goal and also a method for communicating the status to the public, the regulated community, and to water professionals. So we did this through the management plan's work group process. This was the ABWR-led stakeholder process for the development of the fifth plan. The general plans of the work groups were to assess and update and develop conservation programs for the fifth plan. And the group convened from mid-2019 to early 2021. So in this process, there were 5 subgroups created, including one for the technical discussion of safe yield. Safe yield is not the goal of Pinal AMA. However, aspects of the work group that discuss safe yield are not relevant to Pinal AMA. However, through this process, the department was able to better understand the Pinal AMA goal and metrics that could be used to understand the Pinal AMA goal. One of those metrics was overdraft, which the technical subgroup spent the majority of the meetings discussing. So decreased overdraft leads to reductions in withdrawals of groundwater, which contributes to the goal of Pinal AMA. So today I'm going to talk about the Pinal management goal, and then also about the method that's described in both these documents here on the screen. So the first is the overdraft safe yield and management goal of Arizona's active management areas. And then the second is chapter 2 at the end in the Pinal management plan. And I will use the overdraft data dashboard, which you'll see screenshots of throughout this presentation to show the results for the Pinal AMA. So again, the Pinal AMA goal is not safe yield, and it's there listed on the screen. I won't repeat it again. To assess the Pinal AMA goal, it's important to look at both quantitative and qualitative aspects that can assist in assessing the goal. Excuse me. So in the fifth management plan technical group, a majority of discussion, as I said, was around the concept of overdraft. I'll talk about this a little bit more in the next slide, but overdraft is a quantitative method that is one aspect that can be used to assist in assessing the goal. Consistent with the Pinal AMA goal of reducing trends toward overdraft, but not necessarily eliminating it, because that's not the goal, would help the Pinal AMA to move towards their goal. In addition to looking at quantitative trends, qualitative aspects were also analyzed to get a comprehensive assessment of the goal. So that last bullet on there, we did then bring together the quantitative and qualitative pieces together in a strategy that allowed the departments to communicate the data and then also the status of the goal. So during the development of this method, we also developed a development dashboard to assist stakeholders in the meetings in seeing the proposals and how those methods might impact the data. So I'm only going to go through the final methods today, but the proposals can be found in the concepts page that's listed there on the screen. So first I'm going to walk through the quantitative piece. So we'll look at overdraft. So I mentioned that the technical group spent a bulk of the meeting discussions on how overdraft is calculated. Overdraft is important to look at, again, because reducing overdraft trends reduces the withdrawals of groundwater and therefore it would help the Pinal AMA reach their goal. Slowing the rate of overdraft may contribute to extending the agricultural economy and then also preserve water supplies for non-irrigation uses. The overdraft calculation is quantitative and compares inflows and outflows to and from the aquifer. If outflows are greater than inflows, then that is a condition of overdraft. For the Pinal AMA, we're not necessarily interested in whether or not the AMA is an overdraft, but rather the long-term trends towards overdraft. A trend away from long-term overdraft would be progress towards the Pinal AMA goal, while a trend towards more or greater long-term overdraft would not contribute to the goal. So analyzing long-term trends will first require us to understand what overdraft looks like annually and then what it looks like in the long term. So the calculation of overdraft itself is fairly straightforward. We subtract the annual outflows from the annual inflows, and then that results in a condition of overdraft or of balance. All the components of the annual calculation are listed here on the screen. We spent a majority of the subgroup going through each of these components and discussing how each is calculated and if it needed to be updated, if the component should be included in the calculation or not, and then if there were components that were not already included on this list that should be included. The components were broadly categorized into natural or artificial. So natural would be those that are naturally occurring, such as stream flow, and then artificial are ones that are human caused, such as groundwater demand. The components were generally derived from annual reports data or from the regional groundwater flow models from each AMA. So the items in blue are from the model, and then the ones in gray are from the annual reports. And as a result of the discussions in the subgroup, we did adjust how a couple of the components were derived. So this shows all the individual inflow and outflow components over time. There are quite a few of them, so it's pretty hard to look at. So if we go to the next slide, you can see it aggregated up just to inflows and outflows. So the dark teal is outflows and the light teal is inflows. The y-axis is acre feet and the x-axis is years. The black line is the result of the annual overdraft calculation. So a line under that 0 mark would be a condition of overdraft. So as you can see in the Pinal AMA, the years in overdraft are quite variable, with the data moving up and down considerably over time. So it would be pretty difficult to see any long-term trends. So the subgroup discussed how we can use that annual data to see long-term trends. This is slightly more difficult as there could be multiple ways to define long-term trends. To define the term long-term. So we want to utilize a method where we could look at the annual data to see long-term trends without masking progress or lack of progress. So we did go through several different methods, including looking just at a specific time frame, looking at this by a specific sector, adjusting the data for specific influences. You can find all that on the concepts page. But what we did end up going with is fairly simple. We knew that artificial components like groundwater demand tended to follow shorter cycles, whereas natural components tended to follow longer cycles. So we took a 3-year running average of the artificial components and a 20-year average of natural components. So what we get as a result, and you can see on the screen here, is something that's a lot smoother and provides us with a long-term overdraft or balance number in every year. So on the screen here is the results for the Pinal AMA. So this is similar to the annual graph, and then the dark purple are the outflows and the light purple is the inflows. And you can see for the Pinal AMA, this line is a lot smoother. It shows that there were many years in the mid-90s where Pinal was on overdraft. However, since that time, the Pinal AMA has trended towards longer-term overdraft. So the quantitative data should only be taken into context with some qualitative pieces. So these are the major factors that influence progress towards the Pinal AMA goal. So in the Pinal AMA, as you know, Colorado River shortage is a concern. A large portion of the Pinal AMA supply is from the Colorado River through direct release and to groundwater savings facilities. As a result of the shortage declarations, agricultural pool users, which are concentrated in the Pinal AMA, will receive cuts sooner than the original timeline. Shortage may cause decrease in deliveries to storage facilities, increased recovery of credits, and overall a decrease in availability of credits. It may also lead to an overall increase in groundwater pumping. The groundwater model used for assured water supply purposes also indicated that there was projected unmet demand in the Pinal AMA. So the last piece I want to talk about is the communication strategy and how we kind of communicated the status of the goal. So we did this by in 2 pages of the dashboard, we summarize kind of the annual, the long-term, and that qualitative piece I just talked about together in one dashboard. We used two different types as a result of the discussion in the subgroup that told us we should have 2 strategies, one for the general public and one for water stakeholders or those who might have a little bit more knowledge in the water world. So we call it the technical piece and then the general public. So I will start with the technical piece, which is here on the screen. It again uses the results of the annual quantitative overdraft methods and the long-term quantitative methods I described earlier. And we summarize that in several metrics. So on this dashboard at the bottom, you can filter by AMA and by management period. So I have it here filtered for now on the 4th management period. So once you click on that AMA in the period, it'll tell you which year of the long-term overdraft we're referring to. So in this one, it's 2019, which is the last data that we have, or the most recent data we have, excuse me. So I'm going to walk through each of these. The first one is the annual overdraft metric. So this uses the annual data. It's qualitative. It tells us whether or not there are more annual years in overdraft or in balance. So an X here would mean that there are more years in overdraft. So for the Pinal AMA, there are more years in overdraft than in balance. So the next 2 columns use the long-term overdraft calculation. The middle is quantitative, and then the one boxed here is a qualitative interpretation of that. So here we're showing the most recent year of the long-term calculation, which is 2019. And this metric tells us whether or not in the year listed, if the AMA is in long-term overdraft. So an X would indicate long-term overdraft, and a check would be a condition of balance. So in 2019, the Pinal AMA is in a state of long-term overdraft. The direction metric below it helps us to understand the progress that is being made towards or away from long-term overdraft. This metric is particularly important for the Pinal AMA, as the goal in this AMA is not necessarily to eliminate overdraft, but rather slow the long-term overdraft. So an X here would mean a trend towards more overdraft, a check would mean a trend away from overdraft or towards balance, and then a blank box, which is what Pinal has here, would be no trend either way. So for Pinal AMA, there's not a trend necessarily towards overdraft or away from overdraft. In the past few years, it's kind of flat. So the column here in the middle are all quantitative results of that long-term overdraft calculation. So the first one is called the single year metric. It is the volume that it would take to get to a state of balance in the year listed. So in the Pinal AMA, to get to a long-term balance in 2019 would require an additional recharge volume of 195,000 acre feet. The next 2 metrics are percentages to give some context to that single year volume. The middle is the volume of overdraft as a percentage of groundwater demand, and the bottom is the volume of water as a percentage of the AMA's total demand. So for the Pinal AMA, although the volume is large at 195,000, it does represent only 18% of the AMA's total use and about a third of the AMA's groundwater use. So the next column summarizes the major factors influencing progress towards the goal. And for the Pinal AMA, the biggest factor is the shortage of Colorado River water. So finally, the status pulls all that information together. So for the Pinal AMA, even though in the most recent long-term analysis years, the trend in long-term overdraft is flat, we're not increasing, the Pinal AMA has not and is not expected to meet its goal. There are projected unmet demands as groundwater may not be available for future residential development. On top of that, Colorado River shortage is expected to reduce the amount available of available renewable supplies and lead to an increased groundwater pumping. So as a result, long-term overdraft is expected to increase in the coming years. So as I mentioned earlier, the subgroup indicated kind of 2 methods needed to communicate the status of the goal, and one was to the general public. So for that audience, this method is intended to be more educational with a high-level status for each AMA. So the idea here is for the reader not to get into the weeds of what all the data is, but rather give a high level summary. So this dashboard has infographics defining overdraft. So defining overdraft, it does also include a graphic for safe field, because we did just use one dashboard for all of the AMAs. However, for Pinal, it's not the goal, so it's not relevant to the Pinal AMA. Then on the right, it's a high level status of the management goal for the AMA in the most current year, which is 2019. So again, for the Pinal AMA, the AMA is not currently meeting and not expected to meet the management goal due to groundwater not being available for future residential development, and then due to anticipated acceleration of groundwater pumping in coming years. So I'm going to just end with a couple of resources for everything I talked about today. The field management concepts page covers all the proposals we looked at and lead up to the report and through the work group process. The overdraft report and dashboard that supplements it are here in the middle. I use snapshots of the dashboard today, but it is an interactive one, and so it's meant to be kind of logically run so you can explore the data. And then I also have the plan here listed on the right. So that I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Amanda. Do the members have any questions or comments for Amanda on the right now? Amanda?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's move this on to item number 8. Regan is to provide a statewide line activity update.
Good morning. I'm not John Riggins. John Riggins unfortunately was not able to be here today, so I'm going to fill in for him. My name is Natalie Nest, and I'm the AMA director responsible for the management plans, and upcoming, I'm also going to be responsible on the AMA side for the supply and demand analysis. So I'll provide you all with a little bit of an update there. So as you all know, we are in the process of finalizing the adoption of the fifth management plans. And I think each of you have heard me say probably 100 times now that the fifth management plans will remain in effect going forward until the legislature determines otherwise. However, kind of with that being open-ended, it is important that we continue focusing on the real culture of conservation, the real history of conservation that Arizona has established over time. So part of that is these analyses, these activities that we have upcoming. This past legislative session, as again, many of you are aware, there was a very large water bill passed, which expanded WIFA and provided $1 billion of funding for water infrastructure and augmentation projects. A part of that was also $200 million for a conservation fund. And a third part of that, among other things, was $3.5 million for the department to do a supply and demand analysis. So what that supply and demand analysis is, or the requirement for us, is that we are required to do a water supply and demand assessment of each groundwater basin around the state on a 5-year rotating basis. There is a minimum number of basins that we have to do each year, but it provides us some flexibility to do fewer in some years and more in other years. We do have a report due on December 1st of each year, starting in 2023. So we're working hard to kind of get this stood up and planned for in preparation for that. What feels like a short deadline to me. Next slide. The purpose of this analysis is really to support the functions of this expanded WIFA board. So they have a whole list of criteria that they can consider in the process of considering requests for funding through this new dollar amount. And one of the considerations that they can, or one of the criteria that they can consider is water supplies and demands. If they're going to consider water supplies and demands, they can then look to us, which is this analysis that I've been talking about of each basin on a 5-year rotating basis. So we will have this on an ongoing basis going forward. EDWR has done some work like this over time in the past. I know many of you have been involved with some of those various past efforts. We did have the supply and demand assessments in the AMAs back around 2010. Those are all available on our website. But a lot of these things have kind of been one-off type analyses. It gets done, it gets published in a report, and then nothing else happens with it. So our goal here for this analysis is to really build up the stuff that has been done in the past in order to create something that can be maintained and updated over time on kind of a continual basis. We do currently do some bids with our data. On an annual basis, we get annual reports, and our AMA staff take that data and compile it, do quality control checks on it, make sure it gets entered into our databases so that it's in a more usable format. Since annual reports are due on March 31st each year for the prior year's water, this quality control and compilation process can take a while. And typically we are done with our compilation and data entry processes around November of each year. So we would have 2022's data kind of finalized around November of 2023. We also combine that information with data that we receive from the other sources like the Bureau of Reclamation and the USGS, and we use all of that combined information to create statewide water use estimates. So since this analysis is intended to be a statewide thing, we're really going to have to be pulling again on a lot of those various sources of information, not just what we have reported in the AMAs. Next slide. Right now, our analysis of the data that we do have ends up producing images like the one you see on the screen that many of you, again, have seen many times. We really want to expand on this. This is a great starting point for us. We've been doing some of this compilation work already, but we're really going to need to build from here and expand on this in order to be able to produce the analyses that will be able to support the functions of that report. So we're working toward that. Right now, and kind of over the course of the next couple months through the end of the year, we are working on hiring and training staff. We'll be developing some of our initial assumptions, identifying what basins we'll be doing in that first year, and working to start developing some of those data sets that we will need outside of the AMAs. Oops, there we go. For calendar year 2023, we're planning to hit the ground running. So these first couple months here are really preparation for hitting the ground running in that first calendar year. So we'll spend the calendar year of 2023 on the analyses for those initial basins. And like I mentioned earlier, we do have a report due on December 1st, 2023 and December 1st of each year thereafter. As we are working through those individual basins and analyses, we are going to have to be developing assumptions and considerations of how we actually do these analyses. as you know, water is complicated. And a lot of these things, as we dig into them more and consider how we're going to make projections around them, rather than answering questions, it brings up a lot more questions. So we are planning to do a number of scenarios of each analysis rather than kind of having one trace. And we're going to be reaching out to individual stakeholders in the given basins and more broadly to kind of help us shape those initial assumptions and those initial analyses to make sure that we are really creating something that both is clear and understandable and also really reflects the water situation of a given basin. So with that, as you all know, we're really in a different and difficult place when it comes to our water in the state. And it's an interesting opportunity to be able some of this data and see how the data associated with these various basins and understanding how the water supply and demands in the different parts of the state are going to help us support us in making decisions for the long term. We're going to have difficult decisions ahead of us. So we're really hoping that these analyses will be able to provide some guidance in terms of how we move forward as a state. So with that, I think the next slide is John's contact information. But again, I'm not John Reagan's, but my contact information was on an earlier slide. And I'd be happy to take any questions from the council. We have not decided that yet. We're still kind of narrowing those down. We're certainly considering things like areas that have known significant issues that we might want to prioritize. We're considering things like some of the uncertainty on the Colorado River, but we don't have a final decision on what those basins will be at this time. I don't know for sure, but I think I personally would be surprised if we had an AMA in this first round, not just because we do have additional data there, but also because of some of that uncertainty on the Colorado River. We want this to be able to hold up over time. and so with some of the decisions that we expect to be made over the course of the next couple of years on the Colorado River, it may be better for us to leave those until there's a little more certainty there.
This is a comment. I think it's very interesting. I look forward to seeing the data that come from this type of work. I suspect this is thought that you will see you can see a large variance from one basin to another basin, depending on population, use, temperatures, climate. It can be a lot of variables to each one of them. It's kind of interesting. And then at some point, I mean, what is the minimum use that each individual is using, and then to reach that population? Then what so fascinating in some ways. My opinion. Question, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate your time. This one will go. Questions or comments? I'd like to discuss. Yeah, the next one. We're done. All of the public.
I appreciate the question and members of the council, thank you. The $3.5 million that I mentioned at the beginning is a continuing number. That's an annual number. So we do expect that, at least given our current plans, that should be sufficient. Like you said, there does tend to be some scope creep with this type of thing. So I think there is some uncertainty there in terms of is that enough forever? I guess I don't know. But for our current plans for the existing staff that we're planning to hire and that type of thing, that money is sufficient. Yes.
Relevant to the public? Hearing none. All right. If there's no objection, I will go ahead and adjourn. Yeah. 7:06. Well, we're 10 minutes. You got it.